the Part 2 of the Republic Act 7877. When is sexual harassment committed in an education or training environment? Education or training-related sexual harassment is committed when: Number 1, the submission to or rejection of the act or series of acts is used as a basis for any decision affecting the complainant, including but not limited to the giving of a grade, the granting of honors or a scholarship, the payment of a stipend or allowance, or the giving of any benefit, privilege, or consideration. Number 2, the act or series of acts have the purpose or effect of interfering with the performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive academic environment of the complainant. Or number 3, the act or series of acts might reasonably be expected to cause discrimination, insecurity, discomfort, offense, or humiliation to a complainant who may be a trainee, apprentice, intern, tutee, or ward of the person complained of. What are the types of sexual harassment? 1 is the quid pro quo. Second is the hostile environment. Here are the typical examples of quid pro quo. Number 1, a supervisor coerces an employee into sexual relationship and then rewards the employee with a promotion. Number 2, a supervisor takes disciplinary action or denies a promotion to an employee because he or she rejected sexual advance from the supervisor. What are the forms of sexual harassment? Number 1 is physical. Under physical is malicious touching, overt sexual advances, gestures with lewd insinuation. And number 2 is verbal, such as but not limited to requests or demands for sexual favors and luring remarks. Another type of sexual harassment is the hostile environment. Hostile environment occurs when unwelcome sexual conduct unreasonably interferes with an individual's job performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. This form of harassment, whether engaged in by a manager or an employee, can constitute discrimination even if there are no tangible economic job consequences. What is the classification of acts of sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is classified as number 1, grave offenses. Grave offenses are the following: A. Unwanted touching of private parts of the body, the genitalia, buttocks, and breast. Letter B. Sexual assault. Letter C. Malicious touching. Letter D. Requesting for sexual favor in exchange for employment, promotion, local or foreign travels, favorable working conditions, or assignments, a passing grade, the granting of honors or scholarships, or the grant of benefits, or payment of a stipend or allowance. And letter E, other analogous cases. Here is another qualifications on acts of sexual harassment. The following are the less grave offenses. A. Unwanted touching or brushing against a victim's body. Letter B. Pinching, not falling under grave offenses. Letter C. Derogatory or degrading remarks or innuendo directed toward the members of one sex or one's sexual orientation or used to describe a person. Letter D. Verbal abuse or threats with sexual overtones. And letter E. Other analogous cases. Next qualification is the light offenses. A. Surreptitious looking or stealing a look at a person's private part or worn undergarments. Letter B. Telling sexist, smutty jokes or sending this through text, electronic mail, or other similar means, causing embarrassment or offense, and carried out after the offender has been advised that they are offensive or embarrassing, or even without such advice, when they are, by their nature, clearly embarrassing, offensive, or vulgar. Now, let's identify the different penalties for the offenses of sexual harassment. These grave offenses will be subject for dismissal, while the less grave offenses, this has the first offense, which is fine or suspension for more than 30 days, but not exceeding 6 months. And the second offense would be dismissal. Next is the penalty on light offenses. The first offense would be reprimand. The second offense would be fine or suspension. Then, the third offense would be dismissal. The gravamen of the offense in the sexual harassment is not the violation of the employee's sexuality, but the abuse of power by the employer. Sexual harassment abounds in all Sikh societies. It is reprehensible enough, but more so when inflicted by those with moral ascendancy over their victims. This act would result in an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment for the employee. It must be emphasized that the demand of a sexual favor need not be explicit or stated. Although it is true that RA 7877 calls for a demand, request, or requirement of a sexual favor, it is not necessary that the demand, request, or requirement of a sexual favor be articulated in a categorical oral or written statement. In one case, the Supreme Court considered the offender's act of mashing the
Thank you
breast
for
of his
accomplishing
student
viewing this
sufficient to constitute
RA.7877.
sexual
God bless
harassment.
everyone.
Don't forget to subscribe.